Hello everyone, and welcome to my presentation, Introduction to CTFs. Thank you very much for having me on as a speaker. This is a topic that is close to my heart, obviously, having competed in many CTFs over the years, almost for about 5 or 6 years now. I think I'm best placed to give you advice and guidance with regards to CTFs and how you can improve. So the ultimate objective is to sort of break down CTFs because CTFs have become very, very popular, but people look at them differently. And my job is to show you why they're important, not just in the sense of winning, which is important in its own sense, but sort of giving you a different paradigm or a different way of looking at CTFs as to how they can help you within your professional career in terms of leveling up and improving your skills. And most of all, the key thing to keep in mind is that CTFs are supposed to be fun. It's sort of the one fun thing that you can do as an InfoSec professional. With that being said, we can get started. This is going to be a fairly short to medium length presentation, but firstly, who am I and what makes me suitable to be giving you advice on this? Well, my name is Alexis Ahmed. I am a senior penetration tester and red team at Hackersploit Cybersecurity. I'm also the founder of Hackersploit Cybersecurity. Hackersploit is a cybersecurity consultancy company that provides primarily offensive security services to small, medium, and large organizations. Some of you already know I'm a cybersecurity instructor and content creator on YouTube, where I post mostly offensive or red team content. Some of my certifications are listed out here, so I'm very much an offensive security type of guy. However, I have had experience with defensive security, having worked as an incident responder previously. I'm also the red team instructor at INE and most recently developed the all-new EJPT version 2 certification. I have about 5 years, I would say, of professional experience playing and competing in CTFs as well as hosting my own CTFs. So I've seen, both sides of the coin in terms of participating and playing CTFs or competing in CTFs and also designing them. So I can give you some very, very useful tips and tricks. Some of my other experiences linked here as well. If you want to reach out to me, the easiest way you can do that is via my Twitter handle, which is at Hackersploit. So that's a bit about me. And as I said, I've been doing this for a while. I've competed in a lot of major CTF competitions. And my job here is to break down a lot of the misconceptions of CTF competitions and show you why they're important, even though, you may not have a starting point. So the agenda is fairly simple with regards to the main topics that I want to cover. So I'm going to introduce you to CTFs formally because I don't think a lot of people actually have that knowledge. I'll talk about the types of CTF competitions, which are very, very, very important because you'll end up finding out that you're good at one type over the other. It's just a matter of intuition, instinct, and personal preference. And then I'll go over some very, very important topics regarding why you should play CTFs, why most people don't play or compete in CTFs, and there's a ton of reasons there, and some CTF tips and tricks that can help you, improve with regards to competing in CTFs actively. So, getting started, firstly, I want to introduce you to CTF. So what does CTF mean? CTF is an abbreviation for Capture the Flag. And in the context of cybersecurity, it is a cybersecurity competition. And that's the key word to note there. It's a competition where participants are asked to or are tasked to solve a series of challenges in order to capture flags. So the objective here is that you're given a series of systems or boxes and you're told to hack into them. And in order to prove that you've hacked into them, you're supposed to capture flags that are in specific locations. So that begs the question, what are flags? Well, flags are usually unique strings or digital tokens that are hidden within a system or network, typically requiring you to have specific privileges or to essentially find or search for them in specific locations or, decrypt a piece of data, therefore revealing the string. And the string is sort of the prize at the end of the challenge that firstly, as I said, proves that you're able to complete the challenge, and secondly, of course, is something that if you've used services or platforms like Hack the Box, you know that these are pretty much the keys to the kingdom, or very, very satisfying to actually get. There's nothing more satisfying than catting out the flag file or the flagged.txt file, especially for the root user. But essentially, I'm getting off topic here. But yeah, in terms of CTF challenges or competitions, but more so when you're talking about CTF challenges, these can vary in type, and we'll talk about the types typically. And this is what you'll see, and this is what I want to cover. When you talk about competitions, you're going to pretty much have challenges around reverse engineering, web security, cryptography, steganography, and forensics, just to name a few. But these are the top or the big boys in terms of challenges. So we have the competition, which is, the competition, and then the challenges, which is what you're tasked to solve. The primary objective of a CTF is to simulate real-world cyber attacks and help participants develop their skills in identifying and exploiting vulnerabilities. So, if we take a historical view at CTFs, they were started by the US military to essentially assess, offensive and defensive skills and capabilities. And in the context of cybersecurity, they're essentially providing, you with I would say, sort of a very realistic real-world environment, primarily because of the factors of time and the competitive nature of them. But they provide you with a real-world environment where you'll be required to now, put to test your skills or your knowledge, skills, and abilities with regards to, identifying and exploiting vulnerabilities. The goal here is not really about identifying and exploiting vulnerabilities, but identifying and exploiting vulnerabilities first and within the shortest amount of time possible. So very, very competitive, and that's why I highlighted that the key word there is competition. Now, the important thing to note is I'm not really going to touch on platforms like Hack the Box, because that's not really a capture the flag. That they just use flags to verify that you've been able to pawn or own the system. I'm specifically referring to CTFs as competitions here because there's a lot of confusion or overlap between those two forms or terms, if you will. So let's cover the types of CTF competitions. This is very, very, very important. So there are plenty of other types that we'll touch upon, but these are the primary types. So firstly, you have your classic Jeopardy style CTF. So most of you have participated in small CTFs or regional CTFs, might have used a platform like CTFD. That is what you would consider or what you would call a Jeopardy style CTF platform. So that begs the question, what is a Jeopardy style CTF? A Jeopardy style CTF is a CTF in which participants are presented with a set of challenges or questions, each with a different point value. All right, so different point values, and the challenges are usually cover topics like cryptography. You must have seen this, reverse engineering, and web security. We've also started seeing new CTFs around OSINT, and so on and so forth. So there's the type of challenges is increasing in number and also variety and complexity, but the primary types are pretty much going to be cryptography, reverse engineering, web security, and also steganography. So the participants are required to solve as many challenges as possible within a limited period in order to earn points and compete with other participants. What that means is that you need to earn points, and the player or the team with the highest amount of points at the end of the competition or at the end of the time allotted is the winner. All right, so I'll actually show you in the next slide what this looks like, but you should already be familiar with it. If you're not, don't worry, I'll show you what it looks like. You then have your, this is pretty much one of my favorites, you have your attack and defense CTFs. So in these CTFs, participants are split into two teams, typically attackers and defenders. the defender team is responsible for setting up a vulnerable system or a vulnerable network, and the attacking team is then tasked to try and exploit it or exploit that particular system or network, while the defender team tries to detect the attacks and defend against them. The winner is determined by the total score earned by each team. So this is it's not very common to see attack defense CTFs because they're very complex to set up, obviously, given the fact that the defender team needs to work on setting up the vulnerable systems, and the architecture behind it or facilitating this type of network or environment can be quite difficult. But when it works, it's absolutely fantastic. And in certain cases, attack defense CTFs actually require teams to operate on the defensive side and the offensive side. So you actually switch at halftime, for example, and you then move on to the defender side, and it sort of gives you a very, very interesting it gives you an interesting look into what the offensive side looks like if you're a defender by practice, and it gives you an idea as to what the offensive side the defensive side looks like if you are a red team or a pen tester by practice. You then have the other type, or the third type, which is King of the Hill, also known as KOTH. In this particular CTF type, participants are required to compete over control over a specific area or asset like a network or server. So you're typically told as an individual, but mostly as a team, to protect a network or a subnet or even a system. And this is, again, very, very fun, but you typically don't see them. And the King of the Hill game type or competition type is typically something that you see in video games now, and FPS shooters. As you know, it's a very, very popular game mode. And in the context of cybersecurity, it's no different. It's absolutely fantastic. So each participant or team is then responsible for holding or trying to hold the area, system, or network for as long as possible by defending it from other participants. So by default, if you're starting out as the team that defends, then you're obviously going to start from the defensive approach or the defensive perspective, and your job then is to try and hold that area or hold control over that network or system for as long as possible. This is very, very useful for defenders or SOC analysts looking to improve their skills, their defensive skills in real time, because you're now being attacked very vigorously, and it can be quite daunting, but also quite fun. So each participant or team is then required to try and hold the area for as long as possible by defending it from other participants. So what happens is if you lose control over the system or the network, then what happens is the individuals or the team or the participant that took over or was able to compromise the network or your defenses then is tasked with holding it or trying to hold over that asset, whether it be a system, a target system, a network, etc. So it's a cyclical thing, and it again is also time-based, which makes it even more fun, because people or teams are constantly trying to hack into the network. Once they get in, then they are responsible for trying to hold on or trying to protect that network, and then you become the attacker, and then you try and break in. If you break in, then you're responsible for holding it. So very, very fun. Although the two that you'll typically see are going to be Jeopardy style CTFs and attack defense CTFs. So this is what they typically look like in terms of high level overview or a topological overview. The Jeopardy style screenshot here is pretty much what it looks like, where you have different challenges and then different points allotted to those challenges. And the key thing here is points. The other types also have points, but the variables are different with regards to point allocation. So for example, in King of the Hill, you're given points, or rather not given points. You could be given points, but mostly the primary factor is the amount of time in total that you are able to hold the system, network, or asset, and prevent it from being attacked or breached. So that's what Jeopardy looks like, and attack defend. But yeah, you also have other types of other CTF competitions, or other CTF types. One popular one that I didn't include as a main one is obviously physical security, where you typically see challenges like lock picking. We've also started seeing a lot of social engineering CTFs, and what's becoming extremely popular now, especially for companies, is recruitment challenges, where if a company is looking for skilled individuals, either on the offensive or defensive side, they'll typically set up a CTF or a challenge, and then the winner or the top three then get into the recruitment process and end up getting hired. So that's the ultimate prize. We also have some more complex ones that are very rare to find but are also held, and those are the SCADA industrial, ICS or TCTFs, which are again very, very specialized. You then have the other ones typically held by governments like the Pentagon. These are typically called cyber defense exercises or cyber drills. Also quite popular now that governments are starting to realize the advantages or the benefits of having people test firstly their assets or their infrastructure, and essentially allowing or taking in the input or learning from this particular program or exercise. So that brings us to a very, very important topic, and that is, why should you play CTFs? Now, there's a lot of reasons that I can recommend, but in my opinion, when I've done this for a very long time now. I've been a pen tester for almost 8 years. And over the period of my career, I've gone from being a learner, a very, 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 very serious learner, and learning a lot from everyone. I still do that, but I've also been able to guide a few individuals who have become professionals and are doing very well in their career. And one of the things I always recommended to them, especially if they were on the offensive side, is that you should play CTF. So why should you play CTFs? Now, these are not sorted in order of importance, but the first one is the most important one. Firstly, they're fun. They're supposed to be fun. This is, again, you have to look at it from that perspective. If you go into a CTF seriously, then you're missing out. You really are missing out on the primary objective. That's why they were set up, in the 90s by small clubs and universities and colleges, was to be fun. There weren't any prizes or anything like that. Of course, there were bragging rights if you came first, but there was always someone coming for a title the next year or the next time you held a CTF. But first thing is they're fun. Secondly, they expose you to new ideas, and I cannot tell you how important this is. Working on your own in cybersecurity is never a good thing. It leaves you in an echo chamber. You don't get exposed to new technologies, new ideas, new ways of looking at things. And, you need to spend time with other people, other professionals that work in your industry. And trust me, you'll become a much better professional. You'll really improve your knowledge, skills, and abilities, and above all, your experience. Moving on, secondly, they provide you with a robust set of challenges to solve, as you already know. They're not limiting you to identifying a CVE and exploiting it with Metasploit. They really require you to think and research on your own. Thirdly, and this is again something that you can attest to if you have competed in them, is they provide you with experience on how to identify and exploit vulnerabilities in various operating systems. So you never want to leave yourself only exposed to one type of operating system. Of course, as you specialize, you'll know where your strengths lie, but it's very important that you learn how to target, BSD, Linux, Mac OS, etc., as well as other technologies, third-party software, and network protocols. So it exposes you to a lot, and it provides you with experience in identifying and exploiting vulnerabilities within these operating systems, technologies, or protocols. Another important reason, and this is something that a lot of people take for granted, especially if you're getting into cybersecurity now, a lot of people tend to take the historical view or the historical perspective of cybersecurity and technology for granted. There is no, and I consider myself extremely lucky to have been able to have been in this industry long enough to have been exposed to, the older operating systems, the older security techniques or defense techniques, and essentially having a historical view of security has given me a lot of experience, and I can now turn around and look at the industry, and I have a I've pretty much experienced a lot during that time, and I have this historical understanding. The point I'm making here is that CTFs could be having older systems and older network protocols, or they could be having challenges that have, or systems or boxes that are still running telnet. But it's important that you understand why we created SSH and why we don't use telnet anymore. If you get what I'm saying, so it sort of gives you that historical understanding and perspective as to why we are where we are right now, and where and why the improvements in security have taken place. And that experience is invaluable. Another reason, and this is very important, is it really puts you into the shoes of a practitioner, especially when talking about attack defense and king of the hill. When you have factors like time and you're competing with others, especially if you're going against defenders, it really puts you into the shoes of a real world practitioner. So if you're on the offensive side, you're learning what it looks and feels like to go up against a defending, or a group of defenders, a SOC analyst, incident responders, so on and so forth, and vice versa for defenders. Another important reason is it improves your critical thinking and research skills. So I think this is one of the most amazing things that it has done. And if you stick with it, you learn how to perform critical thinking, you learn how to stop and assess a system and assess, what's going on, and learn how to research problems on your own, find solutions to those problems on your own, and in a very, very small amount of time. Because remember, you're against the clock, and you need to solve this challenge in order to get the points. If you're doing Jeopardy or if you're doing attack defense, you need to be able to break in as quickly as possible. Another reason, of course, is it makes you try harder. Now, this is something that I really, really like, because you'll always be stumped by a challenge, a set of challenges, or probably one or two challenges, and these are the ones that will teach you a lot. So it always teaches you, or it at least tries to teach you the process of not the process, but I would say the value of persistence and sticking with it, and going at that particular challenge as much as possible. Now, of course, if you don't have enough time to complete that challenge within the CTF competition time, that's fine. Most CTF competitions usually release walkthroughs that will essentially show you where you're going wrong. And most importantly, it'll help you improve and hone your skills, as well as identify your knowledge, skills, and abilities gap. And this is arguably, I would think, one of the most important reasons, not because it's not fun or anything like that, or it is fun, but rather this is the primary goal of CTFs, and at least in my experience, why you should be playing them, because it allows you to identify where you're weak. If you keep on doing hack the box challenges, that's fine. But those are pretty linear with regards to their challenges, and after a while, after probably 1 year, you'll be pretty good at hack the box. However, with CTFs, given the fact that you're being exposed to different environments, you really identify where you need to improve, not just with regards to your skills, but also your knowledge. So where you need to improve in terms of your theoretical understanding of, let's say, a protocol like SMB, just as a simple example. You may also learn that you're not good, or you don't have a good understanding of Active Directory. You may see that you like cryptography, but you don't have a good understanding of cryptography, so you need to improve there. The great thing with CTFs is that there's a CTF almost every week, which means you can do a CTF in January, identify that you're weak in web exploitation, level up your skills for like 2 or 3 months, and then go into another CTF and then see whether you've improved. And this allows you to essentially reassess your progress to see whether you have indeed progressed, which is absolutely fantastic. There's obviously a couple of other reasons, and these are some of the reasons that typically go overlooked. When you play CTFs, especially in a team, it really improves your communication and teamwork skills, because you learn about other people, their strengths, their weaknesses, and you learn how to pull together as a team to solve challenges. Of course, it's not going to be perfect, but you learn how to communicate effectively and efficiently with different people who are, who have different personalities. You learn about teamwork, how to collaborate, so on and so forth. And of course, another reason is, and this is one that I said usually goes overlooked, and that is you will gain new friends. And I cannot tell you how many friends I've made from CTFs that are still my friends today. Absolutely wonderful relationships have formed, new experiences, new opportunities that came from those friendships. And of course, that also applies to me. You'll be able to, interact with people who have different skills, who have worked in different sectors of cybersecurity. You'll just learn a lot, and you'll make lifelong friends. I can almost guarantee you that. Of course, other reasons are around the fact that you can get a job. A lot of companies now actually ask for whether you've been in CTFs, your score. I've known people who have ranked, top, or the top three for, let's say 3 CTF competitions in a year, and actually got a high paying job with no certificates or anything like that. So, companies are actually starting to use CTFs now to identify talent and, recruit people from there. So very, very, important reason there if that's what you're looking to do. But for me, I typically do CTFs because they're fun, firstly. Secondly, I like spending time with my friends and my team. And thirdly, it allows me to learn new technologies or new techniques that I wasn't exposed to, or that, these techniques could be net new. But I like staying up to date with the latest with regards to both offensive and defensive security. Another reason, of course, is to interact and learn from experienced practitioners. So when competing in a CTF, if you have the ability to interact with some of the top teams and some of the top players who have been doing it for years and do it professionally, they will really, really, really help you. Because the important thing to know is that when you hang out with professionals in a particular industry, let's say you want to become a pilot, if you spend most of your time with with someone who works in a bar, for example, you're not going to improve as much as if you would spend time with a pilot. Not just in the cockpit, but just spending time with pilots will help you identify what you need to know. The 20% that makes up the 80%. They'll essentially tell you exactly what you need to focus on. Instead of getting overwhelmed with what you should do, what you should learn, they'll tell you what you need to focus on. Another reason is it gives you the opportunity to give back and to teach others. So when you become experienced, you're going to get new team members, or you're going to form a new team. You're going to always have inexperienced people just like you, and now is your chance to give back and to teach others and improve them, and foster the next generation of cybersecurity professionals. Of course, as we know, it's great for offensive security practice. And the final reason that I can say, or that I can provide you, is that they always are, or mostly are, free to participate in, which is absolutely fantastic. You don't need anything. All you need to do is just form a team or participate as an individual if the CTF is, for example, Jeopardy based. But, they're all free. Companies, organizations all do this. Of course, the only limit is that you need to register fairly quickly, because most of the slots will get filled up. But if you are competing in quite a large CTF competition, you don't need to pay for anything. If it's an on-site CTF competition, you just need to go onto the venue with your laptop, and that's pretty much it. Most CTF events provide you with food, a great place to compete from, in a really great environment. So, there's really no disadvantage to playing CTFs, apart from the fact that you might get addicted to them once you start getting the hang of it, or the hang of things. Now, this brings me to another important point, and this is something that's quite sad to me, but of course, it's a topic that a lot of people bring up, and it usually comprises of legitimate reasons, but mostly excuses as to why most people don't compete in CTFs, or why most people don't CTF. The first reason, and this is understandable to me, and I understand this, and that is I don't have free time. There's nothing that hurts me more knowing that there's a CTF competition that I know I could have competed in and not being able to because I'm working, or I don't have any free time, or I'm tired, or it's on a weekend and I really, again, don't have any free time. I mean, it's a reason that is legitimate, and there is really no way around it. Of course, what I would recommend doing is setting up a calendar or viewing. I'll show you how to view all of these scheduled CTFs for the year, and that way you'll be, you can be able to schedule when you want to play a specific CTF in a specific month, and then create some free time for that. Now, the excuses that you typically hear, and I'll counter these excuses, are you typically hear mostly students and individuals getting started in CTFs. They'll typically say that I'm not good enough. So, there's a perceived lack of skill, which again is quite confusing to me, because the reason I got into CTFs, and most of the people I know got into CTFs, is because they didn't have skill. That's why they were getting into CTFs. You don't get into a CTF on day one to win. You're not going to win. But I can't begin to tell you how much better you'll be after that one CTF competition. There's no way to describe how much you'll know about yourself with regards to what you're good at, what you want to do in terms of the challenges you want to focus on, and where you need to improve. Now, the other reason holds some accuracy, in that some people, for whatever reason, may not be comfortable working in a group. Now, I totally understand that, and this is something that is legitimate. And in that case, you don't have to compete or get into CTF competitions that require teams, or you could, you could choose to form a very small team with people that you're comfortable working with. Because again, remember, CTF teams are not chosen, or CTF teams usually don't choose people, and you're not forced into a team, right? That's never how it works. It's typically a group of friends, or like-minded individuals who are already friends and are comfortable with each other, that end up forming a group. Now, of course, when things get professional and commercial, like even with esports or gaming teams, then at that point, things can get a bit uncomfortable. But again, as I said, just go into it with the objective of trying to learn. That's what you're trying to do, trying to improve your skill, not competing with anyone. Trust me, when you're a beginner or when you're getting into cybersecurity, the first 3 to 5 years are not about competing. Trust me, you will not be able to compete. You may be able to if you're able to level up extremely fast, but I can almost guarantee you that top 10 is very difficult to crack, especially now that there's a lot of teams that have people who have been doing, let's say, pen testing and red teaming for 10 years. So this is something that they are extremely good at, not because they're special or they have a higher intelligence, is because they've been doing it for 10 years. And when you do something for 10 years, it becomes tacit, it becomes intuitive. You no longer have to think. Just like a professional footballer, when a ball is crossed into him, he's not thinking about what to do. His instincts are in charge of what he does next. And if he had a great coach and was developed correctly, then his skill in this particular context will result in him heading or kicking the ball in the back of the net. If technique or skill is not taught correctly, then the footballer will typically miss the shot. And it doesn't matter whether they have good or bad skill. They all know what to do. It's all about instinct. And so in the early days, you're trying to improve your skills, but after a while, I wouldn't say that you'll plateau in terms of your skills, but you'll reach a point where you'll be very good at a subset of things. Of course, there's other areas that you'll be fairly good at, but you will have a good grasp over cybersecurity in general, and stuff like pen testing will become tacit. So it's not really, at that point, it's not really about a challenge being too difficult to solve. The pro CTF players and teams are all about doing it in the smallest amount of time possible. And what you'll typically see them doing is trying to make themselves as efficient as possible. So they'll come up with key bindings and ways to ensure that they can interact with their system or with the target system as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So they have all the binaries, the files that they require on hand, all scripts they may require. They're extremely efficient in the terminal. They know how to do text manipulation. They can use all text editors in the terminal. They know how to, sort and organize data. They know, about system administration. The point I'm making is, at the pro level, they're just looking at closing those final gaps or those final inches. So always keep that in mind. Another reason that you typically hear is that challenges are too difficult and competitions can be intimidating. Now, this is true. Competitions, any competition, especially given what CTF competitions can be like, are always going to be intimidating. They were for me the first time I did them, and in that case, they weren't as popular as they are right now, and they were still, intimidating because there's this sense of wanting to prove yourself, which I totally understand, and you want to show your worth. But remember, the CTF competition really isn't about that. At this level, you'll get to that stage if you actually persist. Trust me, you will get to that point where you're able to go into CTF competition and finish in the top 5, top 10, even top 3, or even win it. So that's not really what you should be going into CTFs with in terms of a mindset. The challenges are going to be difficult. That's what it's all about. They can be easy. I know that you want to get your first point or your first 10 or 100 points. That feeling is absolutely amazing, but it'll be even more amazing if the challenge you solve was extremely difficult. So again, if you go into it wanting to learn, trust me, it's never going to be something that is unpleasant. And if it is unpleasant, then stop. Trust me, because that's not what a CTF is all about. And of course, the final excuse is fear of failing. Everyone has this. This usually comes about when you're looking at a CTF like a competition. Now imagine if you wanted to get into UFC fighting. Imagine how naive it would be for you to assume that after your first 3 fights, that you can actually become the UFC heavyweight or lightweight. That's not how things work. So you are going to fail. Failure is a part of life. Whether you're writing a book, whether you're making food or you're cooking, you're always going to fail. That's just part of life. The important skill in life is knowing this. And once you know it and you're okay with it and you understand that failure is like a course or like a book or like a tutorial, it's teaching you what you need to improve on. Now, the problem that I have with failure is consistent failure, where someone fails and they don't learn from their failure. So let's say you fail at a challenge. The individual doesn't end up looking at the walkthrough, understanding where they lacked knowledge, skills, or abilities, and then improving on that, and then they keep on failing on that challenge. That's really where I have an issue with. So don't be afraid of failing. You are going to fail. I'm telling you this right now. And again, a lot of you might be a little bit saddened by that as I say it, but again, you're looking at it wrongly. In fact, I encourage you to seek failure, because I swear you learn a lot. You learn way more from failure than from that flag or those points that you get. So, dealing with the excuses, firstly, you don't need to actively participate. You can follow along and observe the teams and players. And as I said, form a team with people you're comfortable with. Secondly, it's not life and death. Do not be afraid. Other team players, other participants are not going to laugh at you. Trust me, they were once where you were, and they understand that there's always going to be that set of individuals that are going to finish last, and those individuals are going to be tomorrow's winners. So it's not life and death. There is no penalty for losing. There isn't. Trust me, there is no leaderboard of losers. There is only the leaderboard of winners. So no one is looking at your losses. It's all about winners, and no one is counting your losses. That's the great thing about something like CTFs. Is, of course, if you talk about, bug bounties, yes, in that case there is a rank, but they're not looking at your misses. People are always going to look at your hits, not your misses. Moving on, of course, you need to be aware of the fact that skills take time to develop, but they do develop. Trust me, you'll be astounded if you just stick with it. If you just stick with it, give it 2-3 years, you'll start to notice that you can't even recognize yourself when you started. Skills are just a result of time and consistent pressure. When I say pressure, I don't mean it in a negative sense. I mean that you're constantly pushing yourself. That's it. That's all it takes to develop skills. Just doing one challenge a day for 30 days, you would have done 30 challenges. That's the way to look at it. You don't look at it and say, I'll do one box every month. It's all about small steps that lead up to a bigger goal. Another thing that you need to know, of course, every great, even the best, the GOAT of CTF players or CTF competitions was once a noob. They were where you were. Can you imagine that? They once did not know how to identify and exploit a SQL injection vulnerability. They didn't know it, but now they do. And how did they do it? And this brings me to another meta reason or another meta point, and that is that always take a look at the best in the game and try and analyze how they did it. In fact, most CTF players are constantly giving interviews as to how they improved. Look at these examples. Understand how they were able to go from a noob, not that there's anything wrong with being a noob, but how they went from that level to the next level. Of course, another reason, another way of dealing with the excuses is to use them as opportunities to identify your weaknesses and work on improving them for the next CTF. Then reassess your progress. So CTFs are a great learning tool. They're better than any course you can take or any Hack the Box subscription you can take, because they force you firstly to fail. The failure leads to you identifying your weaknesses, and you then now know what to work on. You set a time for your next CTF, work on what needs to be improved, and then in the next CTF you're able to see, hey, did I improve? Have I improved? And you will see an improvement. And now that is what that's what's going to give you momentum to proceed on. And of course, I already mentioned to start small. Start with small CTF competitions, easy ones, and build your confidence that way. Find a mentor or a team that's willing to guide you. This is very, very important. If you can get into the right team, the team members will teach you more than any book or course will ever teach you, because you'll be able to see them doing stuff. You learn just by seeing them, various tips and tricks. You learn about various technologies, because each CTF player or each member as part of a CTF team is good at a specific skill, or is good at dealing with a specific challenge or solving a specific challenge. So you'll be able to learn from them as well. Now, that brings us to what CTFs are like today. Now, why am I bringing this up? This is very, very important, because CTFs have historically changed. What do I mean by this? In the early days, CTFs were very informal. The challenges were, typically set up by one or two guys, and the challenges were not that difficult in hindsight. When compared to today, challenges are much more difficult, because remember, people's skill is improving rapidly. There is no industry that I've seen like cybersecurity where individual skill levels are improving because of platforms like Hack the Box, Try Hack Me, and obviously CTFs. I mean, if you think of it, even in programming or any other technology sector, the professionals and practitioners are not keeping up or are not improving as much as cybersecurity professionals. Because a programmer, learns one programming language. They learn, if they're a beginner, they constantly learning about how to solve problems. But once they pass a certain threshold, they begin to plateau. Whereas with CTFs and cybersecurity, because of the constantly evolving landscape, the CTFs are also evolving to become more competitive. What this means is that they become more difficult, more competitive, only if you're not keeping up to date with the latest. And that's why I do CTFs, so that I can essentially keep up to date, or keep myself upskilled with regards to the latest and the greatest. CTFs today are also seeing some really, really cool new and innovative ideas and challenges with regards to how the challenges are set up. They're not set up as simply as they were previously, where you find a file on a web server that contains the flag. Now you're starting to see flags being contained in in-memory databases, and really, really cool stuff like that. And of course, this is something that applied previously, but more so now. They now require a wider array of skills that, that skills that may overlap into forensics, into reverse engineering, so on and so forth. So you actually end up learning a lot more, and you don't need to master any of the other sectors or skills that are not important to you in your career, but they give you that experience and exposure to them, so that you can look at the cybersecurity industry and say, hey, I'm pretty confident that I can operate in any one of those, not at a professional or at a practitioner level, but how to reverse engineer, for example, a simple binary, or perform a basic buffer overflow. Just knowing that is very, very important, as an example. Now, how do you counter this increased difficulty in CTFs today? The best way of doing this is, if you fail at a challenge, most CTF competitions will publish the walkthroughs or the write-ups of the challenges. So look at the walkthroughs. If you have a mentor, or if you have other team members, you can do it with them. You can consult with them, identify, you can look at that and say, okay, that's pretty interesting. You can then try and recreate it. However, most CTF competitions also now preserve and host the CTF lab environments for beginners and students, therefore removing the competitive time-based factors that could have previously hindered or intimidated you. So, if you don't want to get into a CTF competition, most of the previous CTF competitions, like for example Hacker 101, still preserves the same CTF labs that they used in the competition, but now you don't have that time factor on your back and can actually go through them at your own pace, therefore giving you that starting point. There are also CTF competitions nowadays that are designed for specific skill levels, or that are designed or that essentially focus on one set of challenges, for example, web security or web exploitation. So if you're good in one area and you want to focus on that type of challenge or vulnerability, then definitely go into those CTF competitions. And of course, I'll recommend it again, join a team. If you're in a group with really professional guys or really, really skilled guys or girls, you will improve. You'll improve almost 10 times, because number one, you learn about what's really important. You'll not be overwhelmed, and you will learn greatly just by looking at what your team members are doing. And again, this is another opportunity where you can teach others. So that brings me to a very key area of my presentation. That is the top CTF categories. At the moment, based on my own analysis, the topmost types of challenges or the skills assessed are going to be reverse engineering, binary exploitation. We're sort of seeing a resurgence in network and traffic analysis. So sort of analyzing traffic, analyzing PCAPs. Cryptography is huge. There's also offensive challenges, but these are usually only see them in attack defense CTF competitions. We also have forensics and web exploitations. These have been the staple of CTF competitions historically. As you know, reverse engineering is a big one, and we'll talk a little bit about the top two because they're quite important. So yeah, let's get started with reverse engineering challenges. So what are you likely to encounter? And the reason why I'm only focusing on the top two is because you'll really see that these are the only challenges. So unfortunately, that's what it is. I'm very good at reverse engineering. I've done a lot of programming myself, so um, fairly good with it. I can tell you that what you'll be dealing with is either portable, executable, or binary reverse engineering, code obfuscation, where you have to deobfuscate code or find a way of deobfuscating code. You then have your typical, very popular crack me programs where you're supposed to reverse engineer an algorithm. Or, for example, you're provided with a program when executed asks you to provide a secret, and your job now is to reverse engineer that executable or binary to identify that secret based on the logic of the actual program or executable. You find that particular code or that key, and you hit OK, and then it gives you the flag. So these are called crack me programs. You then have patch me programs where you're supposed to fix a program that's not working by reverse engineering it, identifying the code that is the incorrect code, modifying it, coming up with a patch for the program, and then fixing it that way. So these are the types of challenges you're likely to see with regards to reverse engineering challenges in CTF competitions. So if you want to get started with reverse engineering, what do I recommend? I'm not going too deep into it because I can tell you if you focus on what I've listed here, you will be good. You'll be good. Number one, pick one architecture. x86 being important, obviously assembly. Pick one, focus on it, don't switch. There's no need to switch to ARM yet. I know there are ARM reverse engineering challenges, but focus on that first. Number two, learn IDA. Do not touch any other, do not touch anything else. Just learn IDA. The books I recommend, number one, the IDA Pro book. Please, if you can get this, get this. You'll learn IDA extremely fast. Second one is practical reverse engineering. This is more so intermediate to advanced, but trust me, this is a game changer, this book. For challenges or labs that are free, please take a look at the site crackmes.one. It's a site that provides you with crackme executables or binaries that will really help you master. This is what I used to master crackmes. Just take a look at it. You can download the actual binaries or executables, and your job is just to try and find that particular key or string of text that will allow you to crack that particular program. You then have binary exploitation challenges. So the key thing to note here is that binary exploitation builds on reverse engineering. So I would recommend starting with reverse engineering if you are interested in binary exploitation. The typical challenges that you'll see is that you'll be provided with a binary, typically a Linux or an ELF binary, and your job is to find a way of getting that binary to pop a shell. That's typically what you'll see, or to read a file over a socket. And this is where skills like debugging comes into play. So GDB is your friend. Learn and master it. Very, very simple to do. And also learn about fuzzing. With regards to where you can start, very, very important that you take a look at stack and heap overflows on Windows, format string vulnerabilities on Linux specifically, memory protection features specifically on Linux again, so DEP, ASLR, and how to bypass a DEP and ASLR, because I've started seeing a lot of the binary exploitation challenges have this in place. The book I recommend here, just one. The most important one is Hacking the Art of Exploitation. Most of you know about it. There is a great site, most of you should already know of it, rather a great free online lab called overthewire.org. They have a war game called Vortex. Vortex is a set of challenges, a set of binary exploitation challenges sorted in order of difficulty. Please do this. If you do this and get to the end of it, there are walkthroughs available online. You will be good for your first CTF competition, specifically targeting binary exploitation, and the same for reverse engineering. I'll just give you a tip. If you go through crackmes, I would say through 30 or 50 of them, You can go to Hack the Box and solve all of their reverse engineering and even binary exploitation challenges. I can almost guarantee that. And that brings us to the final one that I wanted to highlight, which is web exploitation challenges. So the key things to note here is you'll typically see web apps, PHP, MySQL, content management systems, and the vulnerabilities you're obviously going to run across are SQL injection, cross-site scripting, LFI, RFI, and also command injection. The key tools that you need to be very, very comfortable with are curl, comics for command injection, and SQL map. The other tools or proxies, just pick one just pick one here, either Burp Suite or Wasp Zap. You need to be able to intercept, modify requests, especially HTTP headers. You also need to know how to perform fuzzing, whether you're doing parameter fuzzing, URL fuzzing, so on and so forth. And if you want some labs, take a look at the over the wire site. They have a challenge called Natus. Again, this is free. And please take a look at Hacker 101. They have the original CTF challenges, as well as extremely helpful instructional videos on the OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities, and of course how to go through the Hacker 101 CTF challenge that is actually still being maintained from the original one. So if you're just getting started with CTFs, what do I recommend? Number one, join a team if you can. Number two, stop caring about what others will think of you if you fail. Number three, you will be overwhelmed. There's no getting around that. That's the great thing about it, because you'll, for the first time in your life, realize how much you don't know. And when you realize that, you'll become humble. And that's the last point in time you'll care about what others think, because no one knows everything and we're all learning constantly. So you will be overwhelmed. That's the point. If you want to take a look at the latest CTFs taking place this week, this month, or next month, or the year, take a look at the site ctftime.org. That's the site I use to essentially identify the CTFs that I want to be a part of, as well as my team. Fourthly, or rather moving on to point 5, you will not win your first CTF. You might, again, I'm just using data and what I've seen. You might rank in the top 10, but you will not win your first CTF, primarily because of the pressure. That's really what will get to you. And lastly, it will take time to get good. It doesn't matter what your objective is. The underlying objective could be that you want to be the topmost player or the topmost CTF competitor in your country or in your continent or in the world. But just know it will take time. You will get there. If that's your goal and you pursue it vigorously, you will get there. Now, as for tips and tricks, this is something that I thought long and hard about, but I think I was able to summarize them into some key points. Number one, think creatively and out of the box. So don't limit yourself to standard pen testing methodologies or anything like that. And this is why I really don't like Hack the Box, because it's made people think in that linear way that CTFs are not using anymore. So Hack the Box is very, very simple. You get user and root. However, when you're talking about CTFs now, you need to think out of the box. You also should try and find mistakes that the developers or organizers made. That's another great way of saving time. A lot of the pro CTF players actually spend a lot of time doing that. Thirdly, think about how the flags are generated and how they might be stored. What do I mean by that is, if you're doing a typical Jeopardy style CTF and you're doing web exploitation, take a look at the web app. Try and get an understanding as to where it might be saved. Could it be saved in the database? Could it be saved within the actual web application source code? Stuff like that. Just always analyze it critically. On Linux, always check for SUID binaries and misconfigured sudo permissions. Trust me, just do that. Also, be aware of the time. I've seen a lot of CTF players spend time on a challenge where they don't understand that the concept of a CTF, if organized correctly, your team should have individuals who are good at specific challenges, and you should not be working on a challenge that you're not good at or that you don't have experience with. focus on your strengths. That's part of the previous point. And of course, the challenge names could be hints. So if you have a challenge name or a question, or essentially the name of the challenge might be a potential hint as to the vulnerability or what you need to do. And of course, again, I'll highlight it again. Don't think like a pen tester. This is not a pen test. Yes, you're still using the same tools and techniques, but the objectives are different. With a pen test, you're trying to look for vulnerabilities and trying to exploit them, whereas with the CTF, you're trying to identify vulnerabilities and exploit them. However, the vulnerabilities may not be vulnerabilities in the traditional sense. The system could be configured in a very interesting way that requires you to creatively think about what's going on. And it's not a simple misconfiguration or a 0 day. And that brings us to the final point and to the end of my presentation, and that is hack on. Keep on pursuing your dreams. CTFs are a great way to improve your skill. In fact, in my opinion, the best way. There is no course or lab subscription that will teach you as much as CTFs will. And I really am serious about this, and that's why I wanted to work on this presentation. And hopefully, I was able to give you a fresh perspective on CTFs. As I said, I'm free, or I'm always willing to answer any of your questions, so always feel free to reach out. I'd also like to thank Kareem for inviting me to present at Hackett. It is a great pleasure, and I'm very grateful if you reached to this point in the presentation. So thank you very much for actually coming along with me, and hopefully I'm able to meet some or most of you, and we'll keep on pursuing cybersecurity in Africa. And I also have a couple of CTFs that I'll be hosting in Africa, so we are going to keep on doing CTFs because I think it's a great way of identifying, nurturing talent, and also fostering a great cybersecurity community that is aware and is essentially up to date in the cybersecurity world. With that being said, thank you very much, and I'll be seeing you when you see me.